Gavin and Master Sebastian.
And a squad of big-name contributors.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
Hello and welcome. Well, I was going to go and join the other camera. Sensational. Look, our vision mixer is one of the best in the business. She's wonderful. She's one of my favourite human beings. But that was, what a way to start the show today. I was about as absent as quality football from the first 75 minutes of Canada-South Africa last night. Am I right? You are with the S Word. Sponsored by Calci. I'm leaving that in the podcast and everything. That's staying in, guys. What a show we've got coming up for you today. We've got a great guest list.
What a start.
We've got knockout football's here. As the World Cup rolls on into the final 3 weeks, we are into knockout football. Last night, Canada with some last-minute heroics from Steven Estaquillo, just absolutely galvanising that whole nation behind their soccer team. Jesse Marsch, is he a cheeseball? Is he a joy? How do you feel about him? We'll talk about that coming up on the show today. And we are going to have...
Hey, take it easy, guys.
That last night was the amuse-bouche for what is an unbelievable knockout stages, and tonight a wonderful night of football. We got Brazil-Japan at 1 p.m. Eastern. We've got just a little matter of Germany getting their knockouts underway against Paraguay, and the Netherlands-Morocco here in the UK, the middle of the night. That is a game I am not missing. Alarms are being set. I am watching that one live because it looks a barnstormer down in Monterrey, Mexico. We'll talk about all of that. We've got a great guest list coming up as well, all here on the S Word. Lovely. Wonderful stuff. You're here with the S Word. That guest list, by the way, does include today. We've got Seb Stafford-Bloor joining us to look forward to Germany tonight. We have got Christina Unkel joining us for some clear and obvious, because to me there was nothing clear and obvious about some of the decisions made this past weekend. Brendan Dunlop will be here, a Canadian broadcaster, to talk about Canada's win last night. Ben Jacobs is in the house. It's almost like a bit of a rest day with only one game yesterday, and there's loads of transfer news out there. Robert Lewandowski moving to Chicago Fire. Big news out here in Europe as well. Apparently Liam Rosenior may be going to Paris FC.
You see our boy, Paris.
Yeah.
Oh la la.
Paris FC have been on LinkedIn. They've been searching for who they want to bring in, and it looks like Liam Rosenior could be the man. So we've got all that coming up on the show today. Wonderful to see you, Master. How are you, brother?
I'm wonderful. Nice to take a day off. It felt weird yesterday, though. I'm not going to lie to you. Because having just one game, I felt like a fiend trying to figure out what to do with the rest of my day. And honestly, I did nothing. I did absolutely nothing. I kept looking around, moping, hoping that there was another game that would pop up, and it didn't, unfortunately. So it's kind of weird that there was only one game yesterday. But alas, we are here, and it is the round of 32. We have 3 great games on today.
Let's talk about that game from last night. Mexico. Canada, South Africa.
It felt like that way because with the amount of Mexican fans that were in the stands, you might as well have said Canada, Mexico.
Listen, Canada taking on South Africa last night, live in Los Angeles, where phones were being thrown during Mexican waves and memes were being made of Jesse Marsch. It wasn't a game that had a huge amount of quality. A shame that it's the one that kicked off the round of 32. I have to say, like, for maybe people,
say that again.
Maybe who are fans of other sports, like, this happens in football sometimes. Sometimes your 0-0's a sensational, like Cape Verde against Spain, and sometimes you have games which are won by a great moment but aren't actually great games of football. It is astonishing to me what a difference Alphonso Davies made when he came off the bench. And we know he's a great player. We know he's, set Europe alight on a domestic basis. We know he's Canada's superstar, but the difference in that team going forwards when he came off the bench with about 20 minutes to go, his link-up play, the way he could take players on, honestly, it elevated everything about their performance. And then Steven Estaquillo, who grabs a wonderful late goal, who has this very difficult story about both of his parents passing away, about becoming this Canadian national, about joining the national team, and just a wonderful, wonderful moment. So, listen, yes, the quality of the game may have not been there, but the drama delivered. Canada are through. They're into the round of 16. And, Master, it's great to see the host nations do well.
It is, especially Canada. This is a historical achievement for Canada, for Canadians, a nation obviously that is known for its hockey, but Jesse Marsch and his national team have done something that's never been done before, making it into the round of 16, winning a knockout stage group, and doing it despite the adversity they've had to face. as you mentioned, some of the best players have not been available. Alphonso Davies is among them. Bombito made his first start in this World Cup against South Africa. He's been working his way up and building towards this possibility of starting, and he only went 59 minutes, but that was still a huge achievement considering how significant of a piece he is. And of course,
it's also worth saying for Bombito as well, may have prevented Jesse Marsch from getting sent off at half time when Marsch, when Marsch went after the referee and Bombito was like, we're just going to go down the tunnel now, Jesse.
Let's go.
Just follow me.
Yeah, the Canadian stopping the American from being too aggressive. Very on cue. But yeah, Bombito. And then, of course, Kone's unfortunate injury is, as we all know, in terms of leg injury, he suffered against Qatar. But that has been the story of Canada in this tournament. It has been not the most ideal circumstances considering the players and the talent that they've had, having to overcome the adversity and the injuries provided to them from some of their key players, and still finding themselves in this position of the round of 16, which would have been a dream situation, a dream scenario for Canada, making it to this point. And as Jesse Marsch notified and make sure the players knew immediately after the match, they're Canadian heroes. And I couldn't agree anymore. There's going to be an entire generation of Canadians moving forward from this point that will recognize and acknowledge this moment, the investment that will come as a result of this to Canadian football. This is a massive and significant and monumental moment for Canadians and those who love football up in the Great North. And I'm ecstatic for them. I'm incredibly happy for them. I'm happy they can have this moment and this achievement. Let's
talk about Jesse Marsch, because you mentioned it there. The post-game speech, the Canadian hero speech. Let's see how it went out live with our friends at Fox.
All right, Steph. Guys, think about the 2 years we've been together. Think about how we talked about sticking to the plan, sticking to who we want to be, playing aggressive, accessing your qualities. You guys showing your character. You guys are Canadian heroes here. Canadian heroes. Canadian heroes for the future children of this country who play this sport. The sport has a big future because of you guys. You should be so proud of who you are. You should be so proud of this game. You never lost the heat. You went after it, played after point, moment after moment. You are Canadian heroes.
And listen, Jesse Marsch has, in this country, gone through a rough ride when it comes to how American he is, right? He came over here, he manages Leeds. The Ted Lasso comparisons were unavoidable. He uses certain words and phrases in press conference. He has a certain level of just, American vigor to him. And he came in for some stick. And now what I'm seeing is that now he's the boss of Canada. And he's kissing the Canadian badge, and he's singing the Canadian national anthem, and he's getting them all on the pitch after the game and giving them a full Canadian hero speech. And he's even afterwards in press conference being asked about the USA's opponent in the next round, Bosnia, who they faced in the group stages, and just saying, I don't care. That's nothing to do with me. Everything about this is turning me into a Canadian hero. And I'm going to be honest about it. The most American man in this whole American World Cup might be the Canada boss, and I'm absolutely loving it.
Yeah, and honestly, this is exactly what Canada needs. They need someone who is unapologetic, someone that is tenacious, someone that is aggressive, someone that really takes it to the United States. And obviously, his reasonings are that, there's a bit of frustration from his end that he didn't receive the U.S. men's national team gig, and well-deserved, but he has been moving off of this vendetta as a result of that, and to the benefit of Canada's men's national team, but also to future generations of Canadians, that an American who has been motivated by the fact that he did not receive the job that he wanted went up north and is making the most and maximizing this and creating a historic and monumental achievement for Canadian football to make it to the round of 16. What a beautiful story. What a beautiful accomplishment. And kudos to Jesse Marsch for taking on the Canadian identity and throwing in his little slice of Americana on top of that and giving them something that they can be proud of. Because I'm in a group chat with a bunch of Canadians, Will, and it's almost like I'm in a group chat with a bunch of British folks. It is the most the pessimism.
Canada and Britain, we do have quite a shared DNA. Like, there is undoubtedly part of us together where we're very apologetic. We try to be very friendly wherever we can, and I would say Canada may be more friendly than Brits, if you've had that
Yes,
experience.
very much so.
But I think there is definitely some shared DNA there. I'd say Canada is almost kind of like the bridge between your Brits and your Americans. And I have to say, I was a little bit annoyed that some of the American media are out there having a go at Jesse Marsch for kissing the badge, like giving him stick. We see Clint Dempsey on TV saying that, like, essentially he's just, he means nothing to me now because he's gone and done that. And I'm like, come on. He's bringing some flavour. He's bringing some fun to this World Cup. He's bringing some Americana. I think that should be celebrated. Unless you got to face off with Canada, I get it. But I'm here for it. Really, really here for it.
I'm here for it too. And again, it's the pessimism in the group chat that I was experiencing from Canadians, and I'm over here having to explain to them, guys, what history has Canada had in the sport? You just accomplished winning a knockout round, and you're being pessimistic throughout the entirety of it, the entire journey. You really there are very few people in that chat that have been actually able to enjoy this ride and understanding what has been accomplished here and how that will impact the trajectory of Canadian football. Enjoy this moment, Canadians. This is an incredible achievement. Like, yes, you may have to face Netherlands or Morocco in the next round, but even Jesse Marsch's perspective on that, he wanted to face a big dog. Mm-hmm. He wanted them to face one of the top teams in this World Cup because he knows that is going to be a litmus test for people to understand in this country, the players to understand, the federation to understand. This is the bar, and this is where we have to get to. And this is a great test for us on the biggest stage in the world to see how we fare against the Netherlands or Morocco. So that way, moving forward, we know what we have to invest in when it comes to our infrastructure. We know what we need when it comes to our support. We know what we need from our players and talent pool, and we know what we need from a coaching staff as well. This could not play out any better for Canada in terms of how this tournament's gone. Outside of not playing in Vancouver for the round of 32, but the support was there, and the achievements and the pathway and the dream of winning a knockout stage has been fulfilled because of Jesse Marsch. So kudos to him. As an American, I have no qualms whatsoever. Congratulations to him. He's doing exactly what he set out to do in Canada.
And just imagine this. Just imagine. He feels so slighted by the USMNT and by the USA. He's being mocked roundly there. They are feeling just absolutely like they have been spat on by the world by not being allowed to play their games at home in the knockout stages, even though they finished second in their group. They could have won it. But finishing second in their group for the USA means they still play on home soil. They're angry they're not on home soil. They're frustrated that they are not being seen as a proper serious nation. And then on July the 4th, on the birth of his very home nation, on which he is going to have to face an absolute big dog in the Netherlands or Morocco, in Houston, Texas of all places, as American as it gets, is Texas. And if he goes there and gets Canada a win and gets them to the quarterfinals of this World Cup,
Jesus,
they should build not just one statue of him outside BC Place. There should be a statue of him in every major Canadian city. I love Jesse Marsch. I'm so on board with Jesse Marsch. I want to see Canada go as deep as they can. It's been wonderful.
The mind cannot even wrap around the fact of Canada trying to beat either Netherlands or Morocco. If it happens, that would be one of the greatest upsets in World Cup history. But again, the simple fact that they can dream of that possibility, I think, is an achievement in itself.
Listen, the one thing to mention about last night is that dream, that possibility. Netherlands, Morocco, two of the toughest teams that they could possibly face in the round of 16 for me. Yesterday, they did face a South Africa side who, we were surprised to see in this stage of the competition, who'd looked poor in their opening game against Mexico, but they get through with that late victory to get through to this stage. And a wonderful moment that was for them as a footballing nation, as a nation who have had to come so far since 2010. But what it highlighted, and this is, we'll talk to Michael Lahoud about this a little bit later in the show. Well, you can talk about this yourself as well. But of all of the nations, all of the federations that have brought nations to this tournament, for CAF to be there and have 10 African teams at this tournament for the first time in their history, and for 9 of them to make it through to the knockout stages, 6 of them as top 2 teams in their groups, is a wonderful, wonderful thing for African football. We heard the great stories from Ali on Friday about how Cape Verde have got here and everything they had to go through and getting support for their travel during the knockouts. And, South Africa, another great story. So, I mean, you can speak on this better than I can, Master, but fair play. African football is saying, don't just think of us as, 1 or 2 nations might do well in this. We are a whole federation who should be taken properly seriously on the international stage.
Yeah. that as Gabs can attest to in terms of Ghana making it through. But that's been the beautiful joy of this expanded tournament, is seeing obviously Africa, that's been a continent that's been disproportionately represented in the World Cup, considering how many confederations there are within the continent. Now seeing them receive 10 nations in this World Cup, 9 of them making it to the knockouts. But Will, the most impressive part is 6 of those nations finished top 2. So it wasn't a dependency of the third place bracket that was the reason why the majority of African nations made it to the knockouts. Had this been a regular tournament without the third place sides making it through, there still would have been 6 teams making it through, which is an incredible achievement as it is, considering how well they did in the group stage. And so seeing 9 nations, seeing everyone talking about African football in this kind of light, especially coming off of 2022 and seeing Morocco making it to the semifinals, where you were able to highlight and accomplish uncharted territory. Once again, we're in another World Cup where we're entering uncharted territory with the amount of African nations in. And who knows how far they go. But the beautiful part is that they all have their own stories. They all have their own style. They all have their own identity. They all have their own cultures. And they're all being on display right now in this World Cup through the knockout stage. Well-deservingly so. And this just continues to present a brighter future for African football as we look ahead to AFCON next summer in East Africa, and the future that may be in terms of the changes that are going to happen within within CAF, presenting opportunities within African Nations League and other tournaments for them to continue to participate and continue to be active year-round. So this is just a continuation of what has gone on for decades now in building up the continent and building up the sport in the continent. And I'm really excited to see how well they do. There's a lot of very interesting and compelling matchups all across in terms of the African nations. When you talk about Belgium, Senegal is one of them that's very interesting. England, DR Congo is another one that I find incredibly interesting. Colombia versus Ghana. A lot of great matchups that, again, 90 minutes, potentially 120 minutes. If these African nations play their style of play, they can really frustrate some of these big giants, and maybe 1 or 2 of them are able to walk away with a huge upset going into the round of 16.
And actually, one that may not be an upset is Friday night Egypt-Australia. And what really highlights this to me about CAF is that you can look down all of the different nations, right? And you can look down all of the different federations, Europe, you'd almost expect for 10 to 13 teams to get out from their 16. They have that storied history in these tournaments, though never have won it in the Americas. European teams never won it in the Americas. It's worth mentioning. CONMEBOL, 5 out of 6 getting out of there. But then you look at the fact, I'm going to combine Asia and Oceania into one here, because otherwise New Zealand are just sat on their own. Only 2 out of those 10 teams making it through to the knockout stages. 8 eliminated when only 16 teams are eliminated total. And you look, Japan, Brazil tonight, they are the underdogs in that game. Although a lot of people quite like an upset there, but still. Australia facing Egypt. They've got to be the underdogs there going up against that Egyptian side. And we might get to the round of 16 with no teams left from that whole part of the world. And it looks like there's going to have to be some huge lessons learnt by, whether that's the Middle Eastern teams, whether that's the Far Eastern Asian teams, that need to look at how things are being done in Africa, how they are building football. Yes, it's great that Japan have this 100-year plan to win a World Cup, but Korea being out already, Japan maybe not going on a deep run. I think it would be a real shocker if Asia don't get a team going deep in this tournament.
Yeah, it would be. South Korea's already gone through an investigation. Their president's called an investigation in terms of understanding how this national embarrassment happened and make sure that it never happens again. And understandably so. And I think a lot of people are shocked by the fact that South Korea is not in the round of 32. And I will say there has been progress in the Middle East in terms of their football, their style of play, that, again, the investment that's been coming in recently, I think it will benefit generations to come. With Asia, it's very fascinating in terms of that federation. I watch a lot of Asian football. There's interesting style of plays that exist there. This is, of course, a region in which Qatar's won back-to-back Asian Cup titles. Like as you talk about Japan, you talk about South Korea, you talk about the dominant forces in that continent. It's also not the same dominant forces that exist within their continental tournaments. So it's a puzzling a region to try and understand. But of course, as you mentioned, with the lack of players and the lack of nations that have made it in to the round of 32, there's a lot of questions to ask. Is
Is Asia too big? Is one question you should ask as well. Is it too big of a confederation, and maybe should it be broken up into two? Something to consider in terms of the travel, the resources, the revenue, how you want to split that up. Something to consider. Oceania is maybe not big enough.
Yeah.
Is another one. The lack of competition, and that's why Australia went up to.
Yeah, Australia, exactly. Australia moving into the Asian Federation. That was the whole theory. And you're like, actually, maybe go the other way. Maybe we need to, listen, loads still to get into. This was, basically, we didn't see each other over the weekend. So there was some hard nerd football conversation we needed to get to. We haven't even talked about the finish of the Austria-Algeria game yet, which I was live on talkSPORT for.
On
Sunday morning. One of the moments of the tournament so far. Absolutely sensational. We've also got to talk about some of the decisions that mean that Iran haven't ended up at this stage, that Colombia were denied a historic win over Portugal as well. So we'll get into those coming up. And we'll preview a brilliant night of football tonight. Japan, Brazil, Netherlands, Morocco. And up next, we'll talk about Germany. They go up against Paraguay in the mid-game tonight. And the brilliant Seb Stafford-Bloor will join us here on the S-Word, sponsored by Kalshi.
The daily deep dive into the world of football.
The S-Word
from talkSPORT. Kickoff to the full-time whistle.
Don't say the S-Word. Say the F-Word. Football.
The S-Word
from talkSPORT.
You're back with the S-Word, sponsored by Kalshi. Will Gavin here in London. The great Master Tesfazian out in Los Angeles. It's popping off in the chat on YouTube, so get involved. talkSPORT S-Word. We're also available on the talkSPORT channel. We're live on Sirius XM FC. We're live on TuneIn Radio. But if you're in those places, get in touch with us on all of these social medias if you're seeing the video. We're on Instagram at talkSPORT S-Word. We're on X at talkSPORT S-Word. You can find us on YouTube, as we mentioned, at the same location as well. Patio Joe's back from Hawaii, back in the chat. As much as we're kind of early morning for those on the West Coast, 8 a.m. for those on the East Coast. Hawaii, we're super early morning, so I understand why Patio Joe wasn't necessarily in the place. Love to hear from you, Joe. There's a lot of Dutch getting excited in the chat as well. The Dutch fan walk turning up tonight in Monterey. I spoke about this on Friday. I looked at possibly booking a ticket to go out there for this weekend just because I so want to be involved in the Dutch fan walk. I just it's such a that song is playing on repeat in my head. Every day I'm just bouncing backwards and forwards on my chair in the office. Joe says Estaquillo, an LAFC boy with the winner for Canada in Los Angeles. What a beautiful moment that was. And I love this from Tracy up in the chat as well. The first match under Jesse Marsch was against the Netherlands. 0-0 at half-time, drubbed 4-0 in the second half. They also lost to Morocco back in 2022. This is a very different Canada side, a very different spirit around them. Just imagine if on the 4th of July in Houston they can get a victory over one of those two teams. It would be sensational. But we want to turn our attention to the action tonight, Master. You
sound like someone that believes. Real quick, you sound like you believe.
I need the belief sign to
you love this.
Like he gets compared to Ted Lasso all the time over here. Let's start believing, boys. Let's start believing. Master, what slate of games we've got tonight? Unbelievable.
Yes, we do.
And we should get our first guest on to talk about those, because the great Seb Stafford-Bloor here to talk about whether Germany-Ecuador was a little bit of a blip, whether they're going to be back on track tonight against Paraguay, live on talkSPORT, of course. Seb, welcome into the show. How are you, brother?
I'm doing good, gents. Thanks for having me back.
We appreciate having you on. I've been watching the fine work you've been doing over on Athletic FC plenty over the course of this tournament. What did you make of that final group stage game for Germany and where it puts them in the position for... Was it a case of just brush it off like the Americans are talking about with Turkey, or did you see some actual signs of concern?
No, I think it was a bit of a mess. Obviously, there are caveats because there's a heavily rotated side put out there, and I think that's a legitimate excuse. At the same time, I think Germany have shown issues all the way through this group stage in all three of those games, and they were present again. So problems containing counterattacks, difficulties facing transition, Manuel Neuer not playing that well again, which is a problem because Nagelsmann made this such a big issue ahead of the World Cup, bringing him back just a few weeks before. One of the big debates in the days since has been around Joshua Kimmich's place in the starting lineup, and Kimmich played against Ecuador, and again, having decided to play him as a right back, Kimmich's lack of pace seemed to be a bit of a problem, which, okay, it didn't really matter because they were through ahead of Ecuador. They hopefully should go through, should be good enough to beat Paraguay later. But then, well, France waiting in the future. So you kind of, and there's a side who have more attacking, like thrusting wide midfielders than they really know what to do with. So big issues, big questions to answer tonight, I think.
Yeah, it's this Germany side coming out of the group stage. I feel exactly how I felt about them before the World Cup. It could work, but I need to see more. And I feel like I'm going into this Paraguay game still wanting more from this side. And I don't know what more I could possibly receive. The Florian Wirtz Musiala situation, assess that for me. How have you felt? This was supposed to be the engine for this team. How do you think it's worked out so far?
Right. Well, I probably need a Netflix series to answer that one, but I'll give it a go in concise form, Master. Look, I think it was a gamble. Look, Jamal Musiala and Florian Wirtz on form, two of the very best players in their position in the world. Inarguably, that's just fact. However, also a fact, neither have had good seasons for different reasons. Injury for Musiala, form for Wirtz, and the hope was get them to the World Cup, allow them to almost play themselves into rhythm. Hasn't really worked. Germany not creating opportunities through that area of the side, really. I think both look a little bit tentative. Musiala has been on the receiving end of some really damning commentary. He was referred to as playing like a schoolboy by parts of the German media for his performance against Ecuador. I chuck, not that he's part of the duo, but I chuck Leroy Sané into there as well, Master, because he's become, on national hate figures is too strong, but his place in the side is a real bone of contention with a lot of German supporters who say, hey, he hasn't played particularly well for Galatasaray last season. And why is he there? What is he doing in this side? Is it just a case of kind of reputation ahead of form? Because a lot of people would prefer Jamie Leveling. from Stuttgart to be starting ahead of him. He scored against Ecuador and played quite well without the ball, but that's another issue. To be honest with you, for the sake of brevity, you'd be better off talking about the parts of the team that are actually working, because Verts Musiala, no. Sané, no. Havertz has been okay, but is kind of at the mercy of what's happening behind him. The double six pivot of Pavlovic and Nemecha in midfield, not working particularly well. Nico Schlotterbeck out for the tournament, which creates a huge problem because, as you guys know, there's no like-for-like replacement for him. There's no left-footed centre-half that Nagelsmann can draft in to cover for him. And we mentioned the Joshua Kimmich situation and people's preference for him to play in midfield. Well, hey, if you do play him in midfield, who goes to right back? Because there's no substitute right back. Rudy Baku was left at home. Joshua Wagnerman wasn't selected. Maybe Nathaniel Brown moves over to the right side out of the his favoured left position. He can do it, but it's a bit of a muddle, right? It's hard to find a lot of positives, or at least a lot of reasons to believe that as best case scenario, France would be the end of the road for them.
Just to come back on something you mentioned on the first answer, Seb, I was doing the games on Sunday morning, and the great Kev Hatchard was on with us over on talkSPORT.
The great man,
a truly great man, right? But we got into this Germany situation and the lack of form from Manuel Neuer, the late call-up. Yeah. There is an argument that Manuel Neuer is a top 5 German national player all time, certainly in that kind of conversation. Yeah. If he's in this form, who from the other keepers would you start? Because neither of them kind of scream, yeah, that's the guy we want to rely on in a tournament necessarily.
Yeah, I wouldn't be putting anybody in ahead of him. I think the contentious point with Neuer was not whether he's good enough to be playing. It was more, hey, you had 2 years to make this decision, and then you did it 3 weeks before the tournament. And after Hoffenheim's Oliver Baumann had been given the opportunity to become the number 1 and had done really nothing to be dropped. Clearly, Neuer is a better goalkeeper, and that remains true even with Manuel Neuer at 40. You probably wouldn't. There's not really a case for elevating Baumann back. Alex Nübel, who is the 3rd choice goalkeeper in the team, good player. Stuttgart's Alex Nübel, who will be leaving the club this summer. He's actually a Bayern Munich player who spent, about 40 years on loan at Stuttgart. I don't think he's a national team caliber goalkeeper. I also think, hey, the point here, guys, is do you take a goalkeeper with limited international experience and throw him into a World Cup knockout game? I think not. So it's kind of a case of dance with the one that brung you, I think, really now. And this is where Germany are. And I think the way to look at it, it's not Manuel Neuer is finished. He's now an appalling keeper. He remains a very good goalkeeper. It's just that compared to the Manuel Neuer of the past, he makes more mistakes. He's more physically brittle. He's had 4 significant injuries this season. And so that's the other question, right? Does he make it through the tournament? Because this is, there's a lot of games in a very short space of time. But there are mistakes. It's kind of the cost of doing business, really, with Neuer, because that's what happens when a goalkeeper gets older. He had a good season, but he's not what he once was. But we're talking, quite rightly, you said he's among the very best players, the very best German players of all time. I would make him among the very best goalkeepers of all time. So it's not a disaster. It's just it's a question of getting used to this new standard, I think. But it's an awkward one because it created a lot of upheaval.
Yeah, it really has, and I don't know what they do with that, and I don't know if there's any solve that they can find out for it in the short term. I want to turn attention to Undav. It's someone that we've talked about quite a bit leading up to this tournament on the show with you on it, in terms of, second in the Bundesliga in goals, his ability to change games, on which we saw it already, 3 goals, 2 assists. What does he have to do to crack the starting 11? Because I'm watching him play, I'm seeing the difference he's making, and I'm seeing clearly Germany could use this in their starting 11.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. So I'll take you back to April when Germany played Ghana in Stuttgart as a friendly, and Undav scored, late winner, really well taken goal. Classic Undav goal, predatory, opportunistic, right place at the right time, great finish. Nagelsmann was asked about this afterwards. He said, is he doing enough to play himself into your World Cup starting 11? And Nagelsmann was quite clumsy. He said, well, I don't know. I think he's more suited to playing a kind of relief role, coming in when defenders are tiring. And it's created a bit of a media storm in Germany, to the point where Nagelsmann actually rang Undav to apologize, said he was inarticulate. But the issue hasn't gone away. And you're quite right to raise it, Master, because his 2 goals against Ivory Coast were superb in different ways. Again, classic Undav. But there's no sign that this is going to be enough to displace Kai Havertz, because the basis of the team is that combination between Havertz, Wirtz, Musiala. It's not working at the moment, but there remains this idea that if Germany can win the World Cup, even though it's an outside chance, all three of those players are going to have to play and play well. And, I love Dennis Undav, but I don't think Nagelsmann's necessarily wrong. I really like him as an impact substitute. And that's not a criticism. It's just what his skill set is. And it's also, if you're struggling with, if Wirtz and Musiala are struggling for form, you need a pure facilitator in there. And arguably, even though Havertz is a lesser goal scorer than Undav, he is better at that part of the game. So I don't see a change tonight because, again, Nagelsmann's kind of hung his hat on this. And you guys probably don't spend a lot of time on German social media, German language social media.
Hey,
but this
my German GCSE gets me further than you'd think.
Okay, well then I feel sorry for you, because this has become an incredibly boring topic. It's a meme. You have all these situations where some of them are really in poor taste, so I won't go there. But you can imagine it's very much like the Carlo Ancelotti. I
was going to say Carlo
situation.
Ancelotti. Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
the same. It's the same.
So funny.
And it's become this kind of, it's just this pivotal issue that sort of lies at the heart of everything that happens to Germany. And I don't know, I choose to focus on the positive, which is in Dennis Undav, Germany have a world-class impact player from the bench. I think that's a real luxury to have, particularly in these conditions, particularly as the tournament goes on. I also think it's slightly unfortunate for Undav, because here's someone, guys, who he's like a character out of Michael Lewis's Moneyball, right? People don't really trust his ability because he doesn't quite look the part, didn't have the right upbringing, didn't come through a club academy. He was playing amateur football until he was in his early 20s and now is at the World Cup scoring goals. So that's amazing, but you have that slight distrust, and his kind of body is slightly disproportionate, but it doesn't detract from the fact that you kind of have to make sure everything in this side works. And for Dennis Undav to perform at his best, he needs the chances which aren't coming. So it's a big model, and it's kind of chicken and the egg. What do we do to change things? But there isn't a definitive answer. And I can't really see Nagelsmann changing his position on this, at least not tonight.
He doesn't have the right body type, but man, does he get on base. Finally, I just want to ask you, Seb, about away from German football. We've not had a chance to talk about this yet on the show. Like I said, I was working on the games on Sunday morning, which meant I was working on that unbelievable Austria-Algeria game and the wonderful story of Sasa Kalajdzic of just getting that late equaliser, keeping Austria in. It was like the Okie on Saturday night, watching Iran were in, Austria were in, Algeria were in. That late equaliser and the story behind it. I saw you tweeting about it, and I just wanted to bring it up because it's astonishing.
Kind of brilliant, right? Mm-hmm. Because here's someone who suffered 3 cruciate ligament tears in his career. Wolves fans will remember that he did one within weeks of arriving at the club when he moved to the Premier League, recovered from it, did it again. And I'm a little bit of an old romantic with these things. I think that kind of bad luck should buy you a moment like that at a World Cup where you get to save your country in the 96th minute, and great finish. And I don't think it's any more complicated than, boy, he deserved a bit of luck, right? I mean, because Kalajdzic at his heart is a really interesting player. Like, he obviously sort of, a lot of people focus on his physical attributes in the way that they used to in England with Peter Crouch. Actually, Kalajdzic was a very technical player, with very gifted.
Good touch for a big man.
Well, good touch for anybody, really. And I'm an average sized man of about 5'10". His touch is a lot better than mine, so we'll just call it good touch. And with different luck, with a different injury history, he might have gone right to the top of the game and had a more of a headline career than he's possibly had. But wonderful for him to have this moment, because that's the kind of thing that you remember when you hang up your boots and it's over 25 years, 30 years, whatever, when he's talking to his grandchildren. Hey, I did this at the World Cup. And I imagine I've spoken to a few Austrian fans, actually, and it is one of their fondest football memories already. So wonderful for him to be at the heart of it, because he's been through so much in football terms.
The gorgeous roller coaster of football. Thank you so much, Seb Stafford-Bloor. Wonderful, wonderful stuff from you.
Thank you so much.
Brilliant as always. And what a wonderful note to finish on, Master, because it's been the World Cup of those great stories so far, and that for me was one of the best so far. But they keep on rolling. We just keep on getting these amazing underdog stories and these amazing comebacks. And
Yep.
I can't wait to see what the round of 32 is going to give us. I can't wait.
I'm excited. So many great matchups, so many great stories ahead, and hopefully some great upsets as well.
I'm getting all romantic. I'm getting all romantic about football again.
You getting romantic about football? Look at that.
Jesse Marsh. I'm getting excited about Sasa Kalajdzic. I'm just,
Look what America's doing for you. Look what America's doing for you. Beautiful, isn't it?
Right. And you know what has to come along and ruin everything is refereeing.
What do you mean?
VAR. Because of course it does. But
we got to rebrand it. Okay? We need a rebranding.
Yeah, sorry. Ref Pro comes along and ruins it for everyone.
There you go.
Who never ruins it for us is the wonderful Christina Unkel with her Clear and Obvious, which comes up next here on the S Word, sponsored by Kaushi.
Around here, we only use the F word.
talkSPORT presents
The S word. presents
The S Word.
Get your full-on football fix from across the football galaxy.
The S Word
From talkSPORT.
You're back with the S Word on talkSPORT. I'm Will Gavin, live in London. The brilliant master Tez Fatsion is with us from Los Angeles, California. You can hear him rubbing his hands together because he's
Come on. Hey, listen. This is what a good 12 to 14 hours of sleep does to you, buddy. You wake up at 5:45 in the morning, ready to go.
Some love to the World Cup, because I have to say that when we got to the end of the group stage and I looked on Sunday and I was like, only Canada, South Africa as a single game on Sunday. It was essentially a rest day. I got more sleep last night than I've had in about 6 weeks. And honestly, it gets me ready and raring to go. I still had enough football.
Come on.
I still had something to talk about, which was my love of Jesse Marsh. We still got a little bit of football and a brilliant moment. But now, we get into the meat of it.
Now you can get mad. You can get angry. You can get frustrated at the impurities of football.
Coming up in the next hour, the brilliant Ben Jacobs joins us. That was one, by the way. If somebody could time code that, we've got the thumbnail, because me looking down the camera. Just pure rage on my face. Michael Lahoud's coming at this hour. Ben Jacobs is coming up in the next hour. What a great hour. We've got Brendan Dunlop to talk about that Canada side. But right now, we need to take the joy of football and funnel it into Clear and Obvious.
After review. Clear and Obvious with Christina Unkel on the S Word.
Still waiting for you to add more to that, producer Sam. Paul from you. Christina.
Well, I mean, first, can we acknowledge the fact, Christina, that we were ahead of the curve here on this one, and now people are stealing our bit of turning Ivan Barton into a dance song? I think you're on mute, but I'm baffled. I don't know if you've noticed the fact that our producer Sam Harris was ahead of the curve. Our crew was ahead of the curve on this one.
Sam was ahead of the curve. I sent him. I saw some EDM DJs now trying to do it. I'm like, Sam, you inspired them. So I think you should get a royalty somehow that way.
Right. We'll let him off.
People putting the fours up. People turning out. Yeah, exactly. People putting the fours up. People are doing Ivan Barton EDM song. I mean, look, this show is very influential in many ways. Let me just say that.
Listen, Christina. Been talking about footballing joy in the show so far, and yet I think we were robbed of a couple of moments of footballing joy this past weekend through VAR. And I have to say, so I tweeted out about the decision in the Colombia game and the decision in the Iran game and the kind of toe offside that we saw. And my question to the world was, how is this in the spirit of the offside rule? How is this enriching the game? How is this? And all the replies I got were like, you have to draw a line. Of course it's offside if it's offside. And people like American fans were citing Isaiah Likely going out of the back of the end zone by a toe in the playoffs and all of these little bits and pieces. I'm like,
Kevin Durant.
That's not the question I'm asking you. The question I'm asking you is, how does this make football better? And right now, it feels like it doesn't.
Oh, and I completely agree with you. It doesn't. I just did an AMA, and that was my biggest thing. I think you and I are on the same page. My mind's baffled where even I talked to past footballers, right, the pundits I'm working with, and I said, do you like this? Do you accept this? And they're like, well, you got to draw the line somewhere, or whether it's offside or whether it's covering your mouth and speaking, or they're like, the laws are the laws. I'm like, when did you guys become so black and white? Like, that is my job, to be annoying and an attorney and a stickler and a ref. And I'm like sitting here, I'm like, come on, guys, live a little, right? But, you know, and it was, the spirit of the game, the spirit of the law. No, like, that is why I loved refereeing, is because we could, you know, I mean, something as simple as we had an instructor and he's like, you know, here's the laws and you can bend them from time to time to help, you know, the game and the flow and what the football expects, but you can never rip them. And right now the spirit is being ripped. And I do think that this is something that needs to be revisited as to what do we think? And once again, the purpose of offside is to not allow an attacker to gain an unfair advantage. We got to redefine unfair advantage, particularly when that was drafted. We didn't have all this technology. So I'm completely with you. Nobody likes the toenails, the tip of the nose, the half side of their butt when they're running the opposite direction. Like, that is not gaining an unfair advantage. So I'm completely with you. It's just taking away. And I read a women's pro team in a league that doesn't have VAR. And I can tell you, it's so beautiful when the assistant referee's flag stays down after a ball's in the back of the net, because you can celebrate immediately.
Master, I know you're going to come in, but I can't watch either of those goals and not say to myself, that doesn't look like I watched the real time. He actually steps back as the ball is delivered in and then attacks the ball. He's gained zero advantage from it. I don't know. And like, for Iran, that's them out of the World Cup. You know, Colombia, it's just a great moment, and maybe you could talk about momentum and what it takes on to the next stage, but it doesn't affect their position. It doesn't affect who they play. But I don't know. I got really annoyed about it, Master. I'm not going to lie.
But I mean, but the difference here, Christina, is that at least the accuracy in the ball, before, when we're drawing lines, we weren't sure, you know, we were kind of estimating whether this was the exact point in which, you know, the ball was kicked and the movement was made. Like, the accuracy here is almost like, you know, automatic ball strikes that we're seeing in baseball, where it is down to literally the millimeter of a differential, which, again, I actually don't mind. But it goes back to the argument I guess Arsene Wenger's made as well, is how do we change this offside rule to account for the fact of now that we have this technology that allows us to see literally down to the millimeter whether someone's off or not. Should we change the offside rule?
Yeah, and it's not only this. I think when we talk about how people are, I guess, accepting the fact that they want black and white, you know, do we keep the line? Do we not keep the line? It's it's predictable. Funny enough, I was talking to Duncan here for ITV. Gosh, his history, by the way, I had no idea, so I'm not going to mess with Duncan, the Scottish player, but Michaela. But I know
Duncan Ferguson, just in case anyone isn't aware, Big Dunk, as he was well known.
Big Dunk. But we were talking about handling, right? And he's like, just make it easy. Just like, why can't we, anytime the ball hits your hand, it's a handball offense? And it's like, because then it becomes too draconian, right? We have situations where someone's standing less than a foot away and someone just flicks it into their arm, even though it's to their side and natural. Like, we can't then punish that as a penalty. That's too draconian. So if we're going to go black and white, do we go black and white in other areas of the law, such as handball offense, right? Do we go black and white as into, okay, point of contact, here we go. So that, I think, is what makes our game beautiful, is that it is a bit subjective. But if we're all saying we need to go black and white, like, how much, once again, back to your point, how much does that take it out of the spirit of the game? And then how much are we beginning to become robotic? No offense to baseball, the ABS system, you can do it because it's a slow moving game, to be quite honest. Baseball's pretty slow. You don't take that energy and that momentum and that just all of it that comes with it, that is why we love the game.
One question on the Iranian one in particular, because the reason that he is offside in that situation is because the goalkeeper has come out to try and punch the ball away and clear the ball away, and therefore he's advanced beyond the position of the last attacker, and suddenly we're into that. It's not one defender, it's actually just two players between you and the goal, right? That's what it is by the rules. Is there something around that? Is there something in the fact that a goalkeeper is only ever going to be beyond that last attacker if there's a moment like that where a mistake has been made or it's heated, or if they've gone forward for a corner or something, if they've done something that's completely out of the norm for what a goalkeeper would do? Is there an argument of like rewriting the rules so that it is just about having a single defender between you and the goal and almost removing the goalkeeper from it entirely?
The law is written, it's the second to last defender, right? Yeah, so exactly. It doesn't say keeper and another second to last defender. So just two defenders between you and the goal line or the ball, right, being ahead of them. So I think this one is just, I know from like an assistant referee standpoint, as soon as the keeper moves out, immediately your brain is supposed to go find the next second to last defender, right? And know this is going to be chaos in any second. And trust me, as a referee, when you see a keeper come out, you're like, chaos is about to ensue. Like, you just mentally like zone in on the points you need to focus on. But it wasn't complicated in the sense that we knew where the line was. It was complicated in communicating it to the fans so that they understood what it is, because it was one of the unique plays in the game that we very rarely see until, like, to your point, somebody goes up for a corner kick and gets set for that. But I think that helps people a little bit understand once it was explained. I know there was a lot of outcry that, it was against Iran and that was purposefully done. And then everyone's like, just read the laws and you'll understand. I think the law as it is good. It should continue to stay. It's second to last defender, and then it's just a matter of people getting their mind around that can include not having the goalkeeper in that position in these fun, rare, chaotic situations.
I want to turn our attention to something you mentioned on the show a couple weeks ago, where you talked about you were tracking the time that was saved, allegedly.
Yeah.
Based off of the new rules in terms of time wasting and substitutions and rushing people off the pitch. Have you found any other research that shows any other details you could share with us coming out of the group stage, whether we actually did save time during a match with these new rules, or if it's more or less the same?
Yeah, so I'm going to get our statistician here. So shout out to Joel. I'm going to get him to wrap up. Him and I talked about it yesterday. We're like, wrap up the group stages and let's figure out how much time was truly saved with these new laws. Now, I've looked everywhere, right? Because if I'm FIFA, which I'm not, by the way, just for those who don't believe it, they all think I'm company woman. I'm like, really? Trust me, they don't pay me. But
the only FIFA shill on this show is Master. Don't worry about it.
I'm big time FIFA shill. Don't worry.
I love it. But like, if I'm FIFA and we have saved that much time, you better believe I am sitting on the top of the mountain and preaching that. And I haven't seen that. I haven't seen anything come out. Not saying it won't. I just haven't seen it. So I'm going to go ahead and collect the data, and it's all from Opta, right? So this isn't something we're sitting there counting. It's all from Opta, which is tracking all the results to see how much time has been saved and or for the ball being in play. But the thing that I was thinking about yesterday, yes, I dork out. I went for a long walk and I was thinking about it. I was like, why does it feel like the ball's in play more? And I'm going to contribute that to the referees allowing a lot more physical contact in this tournament. There's not as much stoppage in time for fouls that are being given. Many are not being given. And I think that's why we're having that feeling and sensation that the ball continues to keep playing. But I'll get back to you guys on it. It's a fun research project of mine.
Wasn't the physicality, wasn't that something, a point of emphasis going into this tournament? And you're saying there has been more physical play. Is that contrary to kind of what we were expecting, especially in the box, where we heard that a lot of the physicality and a lot of the player grabbing and stuff that we've seen in the Premier League was going to be emphasized a bit more?
Yeah, and I think what they were going to emphasize was a lot of that grabbing, the pulling, the holding. When you have set pieces leading into the attack, that's what they were going to try to regulate a bit more. What we see a lot more, the physicality, is the body-to-body contact, not just happening in the middle of the field, right, that are not being given, but also that aren't happening in the penalty area. This tournament, we're not talking about how VAR is intervening. We're actually talking about how VAR has not intervened in this tournament where we expected it to be intervening and due to our domestic game. So it's going to be a little bit more of they're still holding true. I mean, we have not yet seen a corner kick where somebody in the attacking half committed a foul prior to the ball being kicked and it being retaken. We have not yet seen that. So that has most likely, one would argue, has had an effect on how people are playing from grappling. But what we have seen is just more of allowing that physical contact, that shoulder to shoulder, the hip to hip. Yesterday's game with Canada and South Africa, right? Stepping in between play and trying to justify that through a touch. That's what we're seeing more. And I think that's why we're seeing more flow to the game, because it's not as static.
I wanted to ask you about that decision because when I saw it last night and eventually saw that reverse angle where it's clear the defender does get a touch on the ball and that's what ends up being the thing that decides it. But you mentioned it, you were with ITV last night and we saw the panel and Big Dunk was on there, not that I'm going to argue with him, but all three of the former footballers there suggested that because the attacker kicks the defender, they are the one initiating the contact, so they're not sure it's a penalty. From my perspective, if I'm running in a straight line and somebody walks in front of me and stops, that's not my fault that I've then hit them just because I'm the one that's initiated the contact. If you're swinging a leg at a shot and the defender puts their leg in the way and you kick their leg, as much as it's not a penalty because of the touch, I'm looking at going, how is that not a penalty if the defender doesn't touch it? How does that not then count as a penalty? Am I just completely off the mark on this, or is there an argument either way?
No, you're not off the mark with this, and that's why it's just like live game call. I always hate it when I don't get the right angles, and it's not because of my video operator. Keats is awesome. It's because the world feed doesn't give it to us. So then 3 minutes later, I was like, yeah, that one would have been nice. Thank you, guys. But that touch, if we remove that touch, to your point, that touch is the reason why it wasn't recommended down for a penalty. Now, you remove that touch, and that argument becomes, and that's why live broadcasting, I said, this is going to fall into another similar clip as in Brazil versus Scotland when Vinicius Jr. stepped in and had a quicker step in before that center back clipped him in the back of the heel on Vinicius Jr. and then they took the goal away because they said he fouled him, right? So that is a very, very similar when you talk about all the considerations of who has the right to that space and when do they stop having that right to the space. And it's kind of and sorry, I know, hey, this is the American show, so people know basketball, right? When you jump and you take that free throw, right, or you take that shot off and you're landing, someone's foot's not allowed to be underneath it, right? Because it can be prone to significant injury because you don't have that time to react and respond to it. And that's your space. That I think needs to be fleshed out quite a bit because I went back and I talked to a couple of players and I said, at what point when you gear up for a shot, are you no longer entitled to that space if someone sticks their foot in there at the last possible second, doesn't touch the ball, but at the end of the day, you have now put yourself, or at least you've been put into a reckless situation where you might break your fibula and or you might break the back of their leg. At what point do we say that we draw the line and say that, okay, now you're putting people into a dangerous situation? And so for me, just the amount of times we referee these, and these are always a little bit dicey, whose fault is it? At the end of the day, it comes down to a little bit of, can that person move out of that position in any way, shape, or form, or they were already naturally fully into that movement. And yesterday, I thought he was already naturally fully into that movement. And I don't agree with, modus operandi. He always, Lara always tries to call for fouls or draws fouls. That one was just natural movement. Guy got put his foot, huge stretch, last second in, able to get it. If he did not touch the ball, my argument would still be that it was penalty.
Listen, the only one I just wanted to touch on quickly, because I know we've gone quite long here, is just, I don't know if you saw the story this morning out of the Telegraph. The English referees are undergoing a corporate rebrand next year. They're no longer going to be called the PGMOL. They're now going to be called Pro Ref. They haven't said it's going to do anything else at all, just a rebrand. And that there's going to be, and they said it's a change as part of a drive to better explain their place in the English game. I don't know about this.
A lot easier to say.
Yeah, it's just, a rebrand is what's that actually doing for us? We need clarity. We need transparency. We don't just need a nice fancy new name.
Yeah, so as long as they didn't spend lots and lots of money on a reband, I can tell you that. Because here domestically, stateside, we are the Professional Referee Organization, PRO. So Howard was with us over here in PRO when it kicked off. He was our VAR instructor. So I'm not necessarily knowing Howard. I'm not surprised that it's been revamped to professional referee, because at the end of the day, if you see FIFA, they keep calling the referees Team One. They're trying to continue to educate the fans and viewers that the referee is part of the game. And most importantly, they are probably one of the most important parts to the game, right? Without a referee, you don't have a game. So this rebrand here is just really to remind people, and I always tell people, like, you got to look at referees like as if you have players and you have a pathway and you have a pipeline in it. So when you say pro referee, immediately that gives you the subconscious, I can become professional, I can get paid for it, and then there's higher standards. So it's a subconscious tweak. I actually don't mind it. I love PGMO because it just feels classic, right? We always talked about, how great the PGMO referees were back in the day. One would argue now, maybe not so, but trust me, they try to ship them to the United States to referee MLS. So I just think it loses a little bit of the nostalgia. And it just, sure, fine, why not? I don't think it hurts anything as long as they didn't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on rebranding.
I wonder if you're the only person in the world who has nostalgia for PGMOL.
Will, I think you might too, though. What are we going to do with this drop that we have that you're Mr. PGMOL? Like, what are we going to do? We have to find a new drop now.
PGMO Will. That's me. I don't know. Christina, wonderful stuff. As always, thank you so much for joining us. The wonderful Christina.
Thank you, Christina.
With her clear and obvious coming up in the next hour. Ben Jacobs is going to be here to talk transfers. Amazing story I've just seen about Eduardo Mendy going all the way back to Al Hilal to go and have his knee injury tested. A 30-hour round trip because the club wanted to test it themselves. And yet, if Senegal advance, he's hoping to play for them again in this tournament. So Ben's going to have more on that for us. And we'll talk African football with Michael Lahoud as well this hour. All coming up here on the S Word.
From kickoff to the full-time whistle,
talkSPORT presents
the S Word. Gavin and Master Tesfacian.
And a squad of big-name contributors.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
You're back with the S Word here on talkSPORT. I'm Will Gavin, live in London. Master Tesfacian, live from Los Angeles, California. And in the final hour of the show, Ben Jacobs joins us from out on the West Coast with some big transfer stories, managerial moves, and also just get a bit of a flavour of what Ben's been up to. Has been on the show in a little while. Michael Lahoud will join us. We talked about this earlier. 9 African teams making the knockout stages.
Unbelievable.
Yes, South Africa knocked out yesterday, but even so, African football enjoying a banner moment at this World Cup right now. But first, let's preview a huge night of action in the round of 32 tonight, Master, because it's just 3 cracking games. We'll start off with Brazil against Japan. Japan limping into this one, maybe get out of the group stages undefeated, but we know all about those injury issues. And yet, is this the Brazil of the past? Is this we still see this hangover going all the way back to the 7-1 defeat in Brazil, and they're yet to really make a huge impact on the stage. I think this is a really intriguing matchup in Houston.
Yeah, I do too, because this Brazilian side, I didn't expect much from them. As I've said time and time again on the show, this is arguably the least talented Brazilian roster I've seen in my lifetime in the World Cup. But they have this like Real Madrid-ness about them that it's a bit terrifying. I'm not gonna lie to you. Seeing what Carlo's been able to do, going back to his diamond 4-4-2 formation that worked so well and effectively when he was at AC Milan, and also helped them win a Champions League with Real Madrid as well prior to Kylian Mbappe arriving there with Jude Bellingham and Vinicius Jr. And it's working out so far. It's been working out, and Vinicius Jr. has been otherworldly right now in terms of the way he's performing. So is this a Brazil side that defies logic in the same way those Real Madrid, Carlo Ancelotti clubs teams did, and just continues to find ways to get results in the most adverse situations? And on the flip side with Japan, as you mentioned, all the injuries, but Japan continuing to bounce back, continuing to fight back. This is a Japan side that a lot of people view as a dark horse. They could very easily win this match and become a team that can make a deep run in this tournament. But I do worry about the injuries, as you mentioned. Do they have enough depth to overcome this? Obviously, the Matoma injury going into this World Cup, and now seeing a couple of their guys dealing with some knocks here. It's still, I think it's going to be a tremendous battle, and I wouldn't be surprised if this one goes to extras.
Yeah, Mitoma, Minamino missing, Endo withdrawing, Kubo managing this knee injury as well. So it's a funny one with Brazil. You mentioned that kind of Real Madrid-ness about them, and obviously it's a Real Madrid star in Vini Jr. that's been dragging them kicking and screaming into the relevance of this World Cup after a bit of a sluggish opening day draw with Morocco. I don't know. We're talking about this with the top-end quality in this tournament, because there's still obviously, as you can imagine, back here in London at the talkSPORT offices, there's a huge amount of conversation, as there always is, about can England win the World Cup, right? And the last 2 performances haven't screamed that they are a World Cup worthy winning team after a brilliant opening game against Croatia. And yet, really tell me, outside of, I would say, France, who have been brilliant in patches, in halves of games, outside of Leo Messi-inspired Argentina, who scored 6 of their 8 goals in this tournament so far, I don't think any of the top dogs have really shown up. And maybe this is a case of that's what we're going to see with this new expanded format. Teams are taking more time. Like both of the first halves against Ghana and Panama, you could argue England so slow. Is that how they're going to approach the games when they're actually going up against opponents when it's a knockout situation? Or are they saving themselves a bit? Is this a tactical decision? And so I do wonder if it's going to be a case of, right, now we're in the knockout stages, some of those big guns are going to put their foot down. And for me, Spain, a prime example of that as well, right? For me, Brazil, I just don't see if they've got that next gear. Maybe they do at this stage, or the 16, but when they come up against a Spain, a France, even in England and Argentina, that could be the moment where suddenly their lack of depth, their lack of quality in the middle, etc., might really tell for them.
Yeah, because the winner of this faces the winner of Cote d'Ivoire versus Norway, which also
that in itself is a really difficult game. Really difficult game.
Yeah, I agree. I think whoever wins that one, it'll be another very interesting, compelling battle. I think that match would be in New York. Don't quote me. Yeah, that match will be July 5th. At MetLife Stadium, or New York, New Jersey Stadium, as we have to say. But yes, the one of the biggest dumps, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, at some point this week. But yeah, it's interesting. But the thing is that all of these teams had flaws that kudos to their opponents. They've been able to find ways to exploit them. And, whether they've gotten results or not, we have seen a lot of these nations that have dealt with these flaws on full display in the group stage. And now the onus is on these quote unquote giants to figure out how they're going to resolve this, because a lot of these issues weren't issues we weren't aware of going into this tournament, whether it was England and whether it was his back line or trying to deal with the low block. These are issues we knew about England going in, that we still have these questions that exist going into the knockouts. With Brazil, their midfield and their back line, these are questions we've had for them going into this tournament and still trying to find out the answers for this. Even with France, France's back line conceding a goal to Norway and potentially could have been 2 on the penalty with Upamecano and Theo Hernandez making mistakes. I still think that's a question in which, because of their offensive firepower, we're still overlooking quite a bit. That, the right place, right time, a team could catch France off guard and really challenge their back line. So I think all of these big nations have a lot of questions, and kudos to the other teams in their groups that have really come up with great game plans to attack them, to approach them in a certain manner, and really try to emphasize on that, trying to get a result. And yeah, I don't know, outside of Argentina, I don't know if you can feel confident about your nation. Yes, you could throw France in there, considering some of the performances they've been able to put up, but I truly think right now at this point, Argentina is on a class of its own because of its performances and the pathway that it has going into the quarterfinals and potentially semifinals, where you really won't be challenged until you get to the quarterfinals and you face Colombia. It couldn't have been a much favorable pathway for Argentina to potentially repeat.
We talked Germany-Paraguay earlier with Sebastian Stafford-Bloor, and we'll talk Netherlands-Morocco coming up a little later with Michael Lahoud as well. I just wanted to give you a bit of breaking news we've got coming to us here at talkSPORT. It's kind of breaking news, it's kind of not. Everyone knew who the next Man City manager was going to be. It's going to be Enzo Maresca, but we have got confirmation the deal has now been done. Maresca is in. A 3-year deal agreed. Wait till you hear this figure. £17 million in compensation going from Man City to Chelsea. And the reason is, and Chelsea put out a statement on this, which I'll read for you now in newsreader fashion. In autumn last year, the club was informed by our former head coach that there might be an opportunity for him to succeed Pep Guardiola at the end of the season. It became clear to us that this was his strong desire to succeed Guardiola and that he was fully committed to pursuing that opportunity despite the fact he was under a long-term contract which he had no right to terminate. In December 2025, our head coach unexpectedly and abruptly resigned from his position. Obviously, we felt let down as we believed that his head and heart were focused on another club and another opportunity, despite having just arrived at Chelsea the year before. A strong statement coming from Chelsea. And you have to say, from Enzo Maresca's perspective, he has not given Man City any kind of way out of this conversation, because he's gone and told the club, by the way, maybe it's the honourable thing to do, but it's not the smart thing to do, Enzo, to go there and say, do you know what, if the Man City job becomes available, I'm going to go take that one. Is that all right? Like, Chelsea is in a team that have recycled managers, that have had problem with ownership, that have got more sporting directors than I've had hot dinners in the last week. I'm sure he could have probably got out of that situation without needing to tell them, I'm going to go replace Pep Guardiola at the end of the season. Like, telling them in autumn last year is kind of astonishing. And so that 17 million figure seems steep. I think Chelsea have every right to have said to Man City, essentially, you've poached our manager from us.
Yeah, but I mean, can you blame him? Would you rather be at Manchester City in the structure that they have compared to what Chelsea's going through right now, Will? Would you rather be at Chelsea or would you rather be at Man City? Even following Pep Guardiola's footsteps, would you rather be in that situation or would you rather be the manager at Chelsea?
Yeah, undoubtedly, you'd want to be in the situation at Man City. Undoubtedly, with the squad they've got. We hear Elliot Anderson, we're hearing, has passed his medical today as well, so that deal will be done in the coming days. That might facilitate and see Rodri move on to Real Madrid potentially, but you are bringing in his long-term replacement now, and he's been excellent in that holding midfield role for England thus far in this tournament. You know the quality of the players you've got there. You know the recent history. I do wonder if players incoming, whether that's the likes of Semenyo and Gay back in January, whether it's the likes of Anderson now, have had any kind of conversation with the club about what's happening with the 115 charges. Similar with Maresca. Have they had any indication from the FA, from the Premier League, as to exactly what's going to be handed down to them, whether it's a points deduction, whether it's a fine, whether it's stripping of anything? Like, you feel like that's the only thing that holds it back, right? That's the only thing that makes you say, of course I'm going to take that job. They've won the Premier League 4 out of 5 years. They've been this team that's had amazing success. They've backed the manager. They've got amazing talent. I just do wonder if they must have some kind of knowledge of what's going to be passed down in that situation, because it has to be coming sometime soon, surely. Ben Jacobs, I'm sure, will answer this for us a little later on, but that's the only thing that holds it back for me. That's the only thing that puts a question mark on it. Otherwise, I think Man City ticks literally every other box that Chelsea doesn't.
Yeah, I agree. And even with that hanging over the club, I still would take the Man City job over the Chelsea job, because even if whatever punishment is provided from whatever the 116 charges that are provided themselves, it still is a much more healthier situation than whatever is going on in Chelsea with all the voices, all the cooks in the kitchen, all the money that they're spending. I mean, Will, they spent what? Like, they've spent so much money in their midfield, and now they're trying to turn to Granit Xhaka to try and stabilize the situation. It's like, in terms of their philosophy, it changes. It feels like every quarter in terms of what Chelsea wants to do and how they want to approach things. And where City, it feels like they have a structure, they have a set philosophy, to have a set identity. He's coming in with a great understanding of Pep's philosophy and Pep's identity, which I'm sure he'll follow in many ways, while also putting on his own spin on it. It's about as stable of a situation as you can ask for Enzo to try and thrive. And say they do get relegated, well, I think that takes some of the pressure off of him, truth be told, because
the guy that returns them to glory.
It's an easy pathway to success. It's like a new CEO coming in after they just laid off 20% of the company and the stock has been down 20%, and now you're coming in to save the day. That's essentially the role Enzo Maresca could play in the situation, where he's coming in and bringing them back up to promotion and rebuilding Manchester City from his perspective.
It's really interesting. There was Sean Dyche was on talkSPORT yesterday with Adam Cattrall, and he was asked about the Burnley job and the Everton job and the jobs he did there, and it's really fascinating to hear him talk about those two different roles, and coming into Burnley and building that club up and doing all the community work he got to do and turning that club into a successful, stable Premier League team, versus what he described as firefighting every day when you get into Everton. And he's like, every time you think you put a fire out, there's suddenly a bigger one turning up. And he's like, he's proud of doing both of those jobs. But certainly when he looks at Burnley and he looks at the work that they could do outside the club and the relationship they could build with the fans and everything else, that's definitely the environment that he comes away from and says, that's the pride, that's the place where he feels the real true connection with. And so, yeah, undoubtedly, if you end up having to be that guy that turns the club back around after the years of Pep Guardiola, it's interesting. Sometimes you don't want to be the guy that follows the guy. You don't want to be the David Moyes to Sir Alex Ferguson. But when Alex Ferguson left, they'd won that Premier League on a hope and a prayer and a little bit of injury luck. It was undoubtedly a weaker squad. Man City, you're coming in when they've just spent, nothing short of just over £200 million on 3 players who are all excellent starters in the Premier League. So, yeah, it's a much stronger position. I would absolutely take that job. Interestingly, talkSPORT does understand, this is just coming in from our very own Alex Crook, talkSPORT does understand that Chelsea did give Maresca permission to speak to City with a view to taking over at the end of the season. Sources claim Maresca lost his head after that meeting, forcing an exit and forcing them to an unwanted mid-season change, which they say ultimately cost them European football. Wow. Maresca apparently has also agreed a separate settlement on top of the £17 million. So Maresca's also paying Chelsea some of the money back that he earned from them during that contract. They're getting £17 million from Man City. And it sounds like Chelsea actually were going to let Maresca go at the end of the year. They were going to give him that opportunity, and essentially Maresca lost his head and left the job. Amazing. This is a story that's going to keep developing. We'll keep telling you more about it. Wow, what a story. We'll get Ben Jacobs coming on momentarily. I'm sure he'll have some updates for us as well. Michael Lahoud coming on this hour. Don't forget, for the S Word, we are live on YouTube. You can get involved in the chat there. We're at talkSPORT S Word, and we're on the talkSPORT YouTube channel. We're live on SiriusXM. We are live on TuneIn Radio as well. So if you're in any of those places, find myself or Master on social media, on X or Instagram's probably easiest. I'm at Will Gavin. He's at Master Tez on X, I believe. Or you can find us on all those wonderful locations you see to his left right now if you're watching on the video stream at talkSPORT S Word. Ben Jacobs up next, assuming that he's not having to be on 17 different phone calls to people from Man City and Chelsea. We'll have to cut the interview off midway through to break more news, but Ben Jacobs will be with us up next here on the S Word.
Big name reaction from both sides of the pond.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
talkSPORT presents
The S Word.
high energy exchanges, fiery fan reactions, and the biggest football debate.
The S Word.
From talkSPORT.
You're back with the S Word here on talkSPORT. I'm Will Gavin, alongside me, Master Tesfati, and we're live in London, Master out in Los Angeles, building up to tonight's games. 3 huge games as the round of 32 rumbles on. We talked Canada, we talked Jesse Marsch and our love for him a little earlier in the show. And tonight, live on talkSPORT, Brazil, Japan, Germany, Paraguay. We've got that Morocco-Netherlands game. Master, that's lovely for you. It's going to be in that little 6 p.m. window. You're going to have had a nice day.
It's going to be lovely.
Are you hitting a little fan fest or something? Have you got some nice plans for that?
I'm hitting the fan fest in my house.
I'm going to go to bed for an hour, setting an alarm and getting back up because I'm so excited about that game. And Michael Lahoud will join us, the brilliant African football expert, coming up shortly to discuss that. Do we have Ben? I didn't actually check during the break because I was too busy reading up about this unbelievable Maresca situation, which we just broke.
You love it. You love the fact that Chelsea
air.
found a way to get some money out of this.
It's astonishing. Honestly, to tell the club that you were going to leave at the end of the year, to get sign off, I'm going to speak to them. Anyway, the man who knows much more about this than we do is talkSPORT Insider, and the man who broke this news in my WhatsApp chats, the brilliant Ben Jacobs, who is with us now. Very good morning to you, Ben.
Good morning.
You never get a day off, do you? There's no such thing as a rest day during the World Cup. Just for people who have maybe missed this, talk to us about this Enzo Maresca situation and this, for me, the astonishing statement coming out of Chelsea about it.
Yeah, so Enzo Maresca confirmed as Manchester City manager. 2 stories here. The first 3-year contract, and Maresca replaces Pep Guardiola. The second is there's been a gap between it being announced and Pep Guardiola departing because Maresca, Manchester City and Chelsea needed to fix upon compensation, and that's because Maresca resigned from Chelsea on New Year's Day. Now, the compensation is 17 million, but Maresca has also agreed a separate settlement, so therefore he has to pay out of pocket as well. And after all of those legalities, you would think that the parties are legally prevented from saying that much, but there are 2 statements to look at. Maresca saying it was his decision to leave Chelsea, which is something that we revealed on talkSPORT at the time. It was disputed by Chelsea insiders and it was painted maybe as more an issue between Maresca and the medical department, but that was a bit of a smokescreen. Maresca resigned, and he says in his statement, "My resignation from Chelsea opened a path for me to join Manchester City." He goes on to say, "I recognise that my departure from Chelsea in the middle of the season caused disruption from the club, and I apologise for that." So all of that tells you that there may well have been a link between Enzo Maresca resigning and a vacancy at Man City, which is intriguing in itself, because if he knew that early in January, suggestions would be, at least as far as I interpret it, that Pep Guardiola was always going to depart at the end of this season. Then you have the Chelsea statement, and it essentially says that it was a hugely disappointing season. That's acknowledged directly to the supporters. And then Chelsea say, and this is probably the strongest bit, the club feels let down, and we believed that our head coach's focus via his head and his heart were on another club. So Chelsea's perspective is that Maresca jumped ship because he knew he was going to get the Manchester City job. Manchester City sources still maintain that he couldn't have possibly definitively known that Pep Guardiola was definitely going to go, because that decision was only made during the March international break. But regardless, both clubs draw a line under it. Chelsea disappointed, Man City get their man, compensation 17 million, and Maresca also has to pay something out of pocket.
A lot to process, Will, in terms of. Go ahead.
My feeling on it is you've got this situation where Chelsea put out this statement, which essentially they believe they're kind of exposing a lack of integrity. But honestly, from Maresca's perspective, in theory, he did the honourable thing. He went to them and told them, I've heard about this opportunity. It's one I want to pursue. Can we have that conversation? And then we're further hearing that they actually let him talk to the club. I don't know what happened between that and him actually then leaving and how that kind of broke down. But I don't know, the accusation that he's lacked integrity here and Chelsea are in the right. It feels like he tried to do the right thing and then it all fell apart.
Well, he had no choice but to declare it. So contractually in Maresca's contract, any approach had to be declared, which is relatively normal. So Maresca went to Chelsea and said, I've had 2 approaches, in fact, from Man City and 1 from Juventus. Now, at that point, Maresca said, I don't have to speak to these clubs. I would actually be willing to discuss a new deal at Chelsea. It never went anywhere. Chelsea gave him permission to speak to Manchester City, but they were of the belief that this was going to be about an exploratory conversation, or this was going to be about a potential deal for the summer that wouldn't distract their season. It became quickly apparent that it would. And then you have the points at which both Chelsea and Maresca, in terms of sources I've spoken to, deviate. Because Maresca argues that there were issues with the medical department, there was interference over selection, there was a strategic mismatch, and regardless of a potential Man City vacancy, the whole situation between Maresca and Chelsea solely became untenable. Of course, you could say if it was that untenable, why was he willing to sign a new deal? Chelsea's perspective is that that was all a smokescreen, and as soon as Enzo Maresca knew that there was a vacancy at Man City and he was guaranteed to get it, City dispute that, Maresca dispute that, because a lot of the parties say Pep didn't know he was leaving at that point. But Chelsea's perspective is Maresca felt he was guaranteed a Man City job, and then it was pointless in his mind to stay at Chelsea. It was better to drive his way out, to wait for Man City and to prepare for that job. And that's why Chelsea feel their season was derailed. And that's why Chelsea have pushed to get this 17 million number in compensation. But of course, there will be other sides to the story painted by those close to both Maresca and Manchester City that are a little bit more aligned with Pep Guardiola making a late season decision and not knowing in that December-January period that he would definitely be leaving Man City.
Okay, so now Enzo has a job. He's at Man City. There's still, 116 charges hanging over this club? Is there a decision made on this? Is that something Enzo knew, what the potential ramifications for this could be? Are we expecting a ruling this summer? What kind of clarity has been provided at this point towards that, knowing that Enzo is going to be at Manchester City?
This appointment is not linked to the charges, which are above 115, as you say. Some believe actually the accurate total is 130. And this is a legally complex case, but the nuts and bolts of it are City vociferously deny any guilt. And we have to wait for the verdict, which has dragged on for quite some time. One of the reasons why is when the initial independent panel report is made, it can be challenged. And both parties, Premier League and Manchester City, can still decide to keep that confidential. So we don't know yet whether the clubs are aware of the initial verdict or just sifting through all the arguments for so many charges is taking such a long period of time. And then thereafter, whatever transpires is not effective of Enzo Maresca, and it's not anticipated that it will have a knock-on effect to his role or was a consideration in taking this job, because City don't believe that they're going to get a significant punishment, because as with UEFA, the belief within the club is that they'll get off or they'll come to an agreement with the Premier League. But if there are punishments, of course, it could affect Enzo Maresca in his day-to-day, but he's committed to this job regardless of the outcome of the charges, nor am I aware that Maresca knows any outcome of the charges ahead of anyone else prior to taking the job. So he's gone in the dark, waiting for these charges to resolve themselves one way or the other. And if the outcome is positive, he gets on as normal. If the outcome is negative, he'll deal with that at the time. But it's not like City have gone to Maresca in advance and said, here's a copy of the verdict or anything like that. You can rest assured it's heading in that direction. The process to resolve those charges is ongoing, and Maresca will have taken this job without knowing the outcome.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Well, look, it's a situation we will continue to track and monitor. Ben, we had lots to get into with, obviously, this big bit of breaking news did drop on us. I did want to ask about Robert Lewandowski. Chicago Fire, supposedly a done deal, according to reports. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, as we revealed yesterday on talkSPORT, 2-year contract, done deal. It's a long-standing saga, this one, and Chicago had kind of lost a little bit of faith as Lewandowski was looking at clubs in Saudi Arabia, including Al Qadsiya and Al Ittihad, but that never developed. And a bit like Leo Messi when he joined into Miami, Lewandowski was also thinking about family, not just football. And this is a deal that's been spearheaded by Greg Broughton, the sporting director at Chicago. And the real breakthrough was about 2 weeks ago now, when Lewandowski flew in person to Chicago, and there was encouragement there from the Chicago hierarchy that maybe they would get the green light. And when he landed, there were billboards with Lewandowski's face on it. Chicago, remember, has got a huge Polish community, so that helps. And then from there, it was a slightly nervous wait as Lewandowski assessed multiple options before, in the last 24 to 48 hours, telling Chicago yes, and he will now join, and formalization for that deal could even happen today.
Ben, want to stay to the transfer news as well, and want to tackle in on Yan Diomande. I think you got some updates on what's going on there, and what's the latest with Yan Diomande and his potential outgoings, or maybe potentially even staying?
Yeah, Yan Diomande and PSG is the one to watch, as I exclusively revealed yesterday. Nasser Al-Khelaifi, the PSG president, has directly opened talks with Leipzig to try and close the deal for Yan Diomande, and talks are already advancing. He is speaking directly to Oliver Mintzlaff, who used to be Leipzig's CEO and now is chairman of the supervisory board of that club. He's got a much wider role within the Red Bull group, but Mintzlaff can close this deal on behalf of Leipzig directly with Al-Khelaifi, and these are two figures that know each other specifically from the European Clubs Association, where they work very closely together. So PSG have got an excellent relationship with Leipzig, and Mintzlaff and Nasser Al-Khelaifi also, and they are confident of agreeing a fee. Liverpool are aware now, as was first reported on The Athletic, that Diomande's favoured destination is PSG. Even though Liverpool had made some progress on the player side, PSG had waited, gone to the player a bit later, and now have a verbal agreement on a 5-year contract with Diomande. So if the clubs agree a fee, as will now be expected, then Diomande will be a PSG, not Liverpool player. But hope for Liverpool. PSG are open potentially to selling Bradley Barcola if they make one or potentially two wide attackers in terms of signings this summer. One is obviously Diomande, and then Magnus Akliush is another player that they're working on as well. So for months and months and months, PSG have said no, Barcola's not for sale. But there's always been that slight glimmer of hope and that slight doubt that this is a particularly hard stance, because Barcola wants game time. Barcola wants to go somewhere and play week in, week out. He can't do that on the left-hand side because of Kvicha Kvaratskhelia. So now PSG are moving in the market. Keep an eye on the Barcola situation, because if PSG add Diomande and or one more attacker in Akliush, the door may be open for Liverpool and even potentially Arsenal to seriously explore Barcola, with a PSG stance of not for sale that might well change, because Barcola has shown no intent as it stands to sign a new deal at the Parc des Princes because he's not happy with his game time.
Yeah, eventually somebody's. You can't have 7 different wingers at the same club. Like as much as I'm sure PSG would love to hoard them like that. And I just wanted to ask on one story that you've been talking about today as well, which not quite transfers, but kind of caught the attention. The 30-hour round trip to check a knee injury. Tell us more.
So Edouard Mendy plays for Al Ahly, and that's in Jeddah. And when he got his knee injury at the World Cup, some protocol will just be you assess it on international duty, but occasionally the club will want to get directly involved. And in an international break or in between internationals, that's not really a point of contention. But at a World Cup, it's a lot harder if the medical staff are not out from the club in America. And in this particular case, Al Ahly were adamant that protocol is they want him back. And if that means bad news, he comes back to Jeddah, he doesn't return to the World Cup. If it's good news, a short trip, if you're lucky, it could take place. But this is Saudi, so it's 30-hour round trip. And Mendy had to go to Jeddah at his club's ask, he was happy to do that, get his knee injury checked, and now he's on his way back and will return tomorrow ahead of the Wednesday game against Belgium in the round of 32. And then from there, it's expected that Mendy, not just because of the travel, but the injury itself, will not be available to start that game against Belgium. But I'm told that Mendy is hopeful if they beat Belgium and reach the round of 16, he might be available for selection again. So this was about Al Ahly trumping the Senegal medical department and Mendy saying, fine, if they want me in Jeddah, I'll go to Jeddah. They pay him well enough and he can fly in a high enough class that's fine. So it's a 30-hour round trip and he'll be back tomorrow and then shake off the jet lag, watch the game, it's expected anyway, against Belgium. And if they win, he's still hoping that he can be fit to play in this World Cup.
I don't know, Master. It kind of blows my mind that the answer isn't, there are great medical facilities in America, let's fly the doctors there. Like, rather than bringing him all the way over.
Tons of world-class facilities in America.
A 30-hour round trip. That's just what's kind of astonishing about it to me, but fascinating. Fascinating. Ben, brilliant as always. I'm sure your phone is absolutely blowing up on this Maresca stuff, so thank you so much for joining us. The wonderful Ben Jacobs, talkSPORT Insider. Brilliant stuff from him. Just one to you, Master, on that situation. It sounds like Yan Diamandi's going to PSG. I mean, it's pretty much a done deal, it feels like, at this point.
You never know. You never know.
Bradley Barcolla's already third choice on that, whether he's playing left or right. He's already clearly third choice with Doué there and with Kvaratskhelia as well. So, is that a cast off if Liverpool go and sign him? Is it we've had to settle for second best because we wanted Yan Diamandi and we've ended up with Bradley Barcola? Or are we like, actually, Barcola's a pretty good shout, could be at Arsenal as well, as we've mentioned. Are you excited about the idea of Barcola being in the Premier League, or is it frustrating that PSG have usurped them?
No, I think he's still an amazing talent. I really do. And someone that's just entering the prime of his career, I think this could be a situation where he could fall in someone's lap and perform really well in the Premier League. Whether it's Liverpool, whether it's Arsenal, whether it's someone else, I'm still very high on Bradley Barcola. It's just with Desiree Doué, I felt even, 18 months ago, that Doué just had a bit more to him than Barcola does. And now at this point, it's very obvious that Doué's kind of taken over there. And along with Kvaratskhelia, there just isn't any playing time for him. And you add in Yan Diamandi as well. It's one of those situations where you can discredit the fact that maybe he fell out and lost playing time at a certain club, but that doesn't diminish the fact that he's still a very quality, very talented player. And if Liverpool comes up on him, I think that'd be a great signing. If Arsenal does, I think that'd be a great signing as well. Two teams that could desperately use someone of his caliber of a player like Barcola.
Right, brilliant stuff from you, Master, as always. Will Gavin here in London, Master Tesfatian out in Los Angeles. We finish things off. We'll look forward to tonight. Morocco, Netherlands, what a game that's going to be. Plus Michael Lahoud will be here to talk about 9 African nations making the knockout stages of a World Cup. Astonishing, wonderful stuff coming up for you here on the S Word.
From the touchline to the terraces,
talkSPORT presents
the S Word. talkSPORT presents
The S Word.
Listen again and subscribe.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
And on the talkSPORT USA YouTube channel.
You're back with the S Word here on talkSPORT on our YouTube channel, powered by talkSPORT over on our personal YouTube channel at the S Word. We're available on all these wonderful social medias. We're on, well, and the rubbish ones as well. I'm not going to tell you which are which. Instagram at talkSPORT S Word. You can figure it out. We're on X at talkSPORT S Word. We're on YouTube at the same as well. Plus, you'll find me and Master there as well. We love it when you interact with the show. We love it when you interact with the clips we're putting out and everything. This huge breaking Enzo Maresca news that he's now the Man City manager, but boy, the compensation is big. We'll have more reaction to that. Ben Jacobs will go up on the channel, so do check that out as well. But we need to look forward to tonight. Netherlands, Morocco, an absolute banger.
Yes.
And Master, we need to talk about it again, because I know we touched on it at the top of the show, but CAF send 10 nations to the World Cup, and 9 of them make the knockout stages. And do you know what? I wasn't here yesterday when Felipe was on. So my favourite guest on the S Word is obviously Michael Lahoud, who joins the show now.
Let's go.
There we go.
You know what? Hey, Will, you know what? I'm going to get a Will Gavin tattoo now. I'm going to get a Will if England win, I tell you what, if England win the World Cup, I'm going to get a Will Gavin tattoo. I'm not going to tell you where, though. That's private information, but personal information right here. Will Gavin tattoo right here on my arm. Will Gavin tattoo.
I was going to say, because we have to see it. And, you know, in the age of AI, I'm not having just a photo of it. Like, we need to see it live and in person.
Don't worry, Will. There won't be any tattoo. You won't have to worry about it.
Oh, man. He had to go there.
I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. Hold on, where's my bag? This would have been the perfect moment to bring the T-shirt out. I got a T-shirt made. I was saving it for Wednesday, but I'll show you it in a bit. Anyway, Mike, 9 African nations making the knockout stages of this tournament. What a story.
Yeah, it's the story of the World Cup. I would say it's a bigger story, or just as equal footing of a story as Lionel Messi breaking the all-time World Cup scoring record. And that says a lot, because when I go back to when I truly fell in love with the game, and that was 1990, you think of England versus Cameroon, you think of Roger Milla doing his little dance like that, and the world taking notice and finally saying, wait, hold on a second. Africans are good at football. Africans can play. We might need to keep an eye out on them. And it wasn't a one-off. Nigeria, 1994. Senegal, 2002. Morocco, in what we just saw at the last World Cup. And I purposely skipped the Ghanaians because I have some family in Ghana that I'm upset with right now. So I need to make amends with them before I acknowledge Ghana in 2010 making the quarterfinal. Had it not been for Luis Suarez, then they probably had a great chance to make it to a semifinal before Morocco did. So this is the next evolution of where African football is heading. And it's about damn time. I know, Master, you're an advocate for this, but it's about damn time the rest of the world finally recognizes that when you give opportunity, Will, you give hope. When you give hope, you give access. And so what Africa has done, and I think a lot of teams learning from what Morocco started doing in 2015, by investing in infrastructure, by investing in grassroots programs, by investing in recruitment, it's closed the gap. And here we see it in the World Cup field, where 90%, 10 teams, 90% make it to the knockout round. This is, as a former player, as someone who represented a country in Africa, this is what I've always dreamt of. This is what I've always wanted for African football.
What do you think this hope will do moving forward? There's still obviously 8 nations left in this tournament, so their journeys obviously will continue this incredible story of African football in this World Cup. But just the simple fact that people are highlighting this, which I know for people like yourself and me, it just has been so much of a struggle just even being able to have the platforms to talk about African football. How much of a joy has it been for you in this tournament, having the platforms to share your love for African football? And what is the hope moving forward of what this World Cup can do for the continent?
Well, I look at countries like Cabo Verde, and I can relate more to the Cabo Verdes than I can to the Cote d'Ivoires, having played for Sierra Leone, because it's a 1 in a million shot that a Cabo Verde gets out of the group. They're the 1%ers, mind you. People gave him a 1% chance to get out of the group. And so that made me feel seen as a West African, as someone who comes from a small country, you know, similar to Cabo Verde. But for me, it's changing the way we talk about African teams. I think that's where I get the most joy, coming on here, talking on the S Word about my love for African football and seeing people connect with African football in a new way. And everyone loves the underdog, or most people should if they have a heart. But a lot of people love the underdog. And so Cabo Verde capturing people's hearts is one thing. But when you look at teams in the different stages, you think of Morocco, the standards are changing, Master. And so I think that's what's going to grow African football even more, when the standard isn't just, can Egypt get out of the group? It's, well, Egypt should get out of the group. Can Morocco just get out of the group? We're now looking at a Morocco side that I personally think should be looking to beat the Netherlands. I think they're going to beat the Netherlands. I think they're a better team than the Dutch. And that might be unpopular opinion, but they'll look at this Dutch team and they won't fear them one bit. And so the standards are growing. You think Cote d'Ivoire, that's one of my dark horses for this tournament. And it's just good to see this sense of ambition amongst African teams, full stop, all around the World Cup.
Hey, if you want to say the African nations doing this well is a bigger story than Leo Messi breaking the record, there'd be no way to prove that more than if Cabo Verde pulled off the ultimate upset, right? That would be the one. That would be the moment that the rest of the world would be nodding along and agreeing with you. I joke there. It'd be amazing if it does happen. That is the true underdog story. But how do you... This is a wonderful success getting to this point, right? What's that tail end success? How far does the furthest team go? How far do they need to go for it to be right? Amazing 9 got out of the groups, but also 1 reached semi-finals, 2 reached semi-finals. We got our first African team in a final. Where does that need to get to?
Yeah, I think a repeat of the semi-final. And I think maybe even multiple teams getting to quarterfinals might be a bigger picture as the whole for African football. Teams like a Morocco, okay, they've made some noise already in the group stage, their performance against Brazil. And I kid you, you're going to hear her first, second, third, or maybe 10th. But Morocco will beat the Netherlands. I think they're a better team. I think they will have more ambition. And I think that when you look at the team, there are 3 players that play for Morocco that were born in the Netherlands. So they're going to be fired up. And they're going to want to win this game significantly for their families in a sense of national pride. So I really look at that. I think a team like Cote d'Ivoire is one to look at, and maybe they can make that sort of run. We're already talking about Yan Diamandi and other players like Ahmad and Christolia. And so it's good to see a lot of these young players, a lot of these nations thinking not just, okay, we got here and we're happy, we're into the knockout round, but let's push our ambition further. So either one team do what Morocco did and get to another semifinal, or multiple teams, I'd say at least 2, getting to a quarterfinal. So if 2 teams got to a quarterfinal, Will, that would be a repeat of success for me for Africa.
Wonderful.
You're pretty bullish on this Moroccan side against Netherlands. I know a lot of people have them as their dark horse, but you're pretty set. You think Morocco's going to win?
I really do. And I think the big thing is, can you keep a lid on the likes of Brian Brobbey? In midfield, that's going to be a fun matchup to watch. Obviously, Ayoub Wadi has been the teenage sensation that everyone probably on the S Word's talking about. Now, I know that a lot of Premier League fans, a lot of Arsenal fans are probably calling up Mikel Arteta on his bat phone and saying, hey, sign this kid. But there's more to this Moroccan team than meets the eye. And Ismail Saibardi, I'm so glad that people who don't get to see him play in the Dutch Eredivisie, and those of us who do follow Dutch football because of a player like him, is getting the flowers that he deserves. He's someone who has really stepped up, had a disappointing AFCON by his standards, was involved in Towelgate, something he apologized for with Edouard Mendy, and is really grown. And I just think that a player like him taking responsibility in the attack, a player like Ayoub El Kabi, who's been on the bench, who's one of the stars from Morocco, he'll have a big part to play. So they have a lot of different answers for different questions they're going to be asked in this game. So we've seen this Dutch side as well. Although they beat Sweden, there was a stretch where it was a game. And the difference is Morocco is a better defensive side than what the Dutch have faced. And I think, personally, they're better than what Japan offered. And Japan scared the hell out of the Dutch. So this is going to be a test of will, a test of focus, and a test of might. And I think Morocco has more of those things than the Netherlands does.
Looking at the kind of wider conversation around the success of the African nations and the success of African football in this tournament, I've seen a lot of angry certain sects of society, unsurprisingly on a certain social media as well, who are talking about the fact that this is the Diaspora World Cup, right? 1 in 4 players is playing for a nation in which they weren't born. There are 99 players born in France alone. I think 53 from Paris alone. Obviously, a huge number of that is around the fact that, you know, the African colonizing and kind of the history there, and the you know, France did some regrettable things in the past, and that's maybe why that's happened, and maybe you should learn history if you're going to complain about it. But
a lot of European countries can say the same thing.
yeah. Trust me.
Yeah.
Trust me. I'm fully aware that me being the one that's talking about this is a horrendous irony in this situation. But do you actually think that this is being the Diaspora World Cup, this being that you have all of those statistics and all of those, that kind of cauldron and melting pot that has allowed nations like Cape Verde to go out and find a much stronger team because of it, is actually normalising this even more, potentially, that it's actually making this, much more of a diverse within each nation World Cup, and therefore suddenly it's not, pat on the head, so surprising that the nations from the smaller regions and federations are doing well?
Yeah, I think this is a great topic, and it's a great question. And I'm actually honored that you would be the one to ask that, because people need to have uncomfortable conversations and also get out of their comfort zone. And it's an opportunity to educate each other. So I don't see this as just the Diaspora World Cup. I see this as an opportunity at a time where the world is in such dire straits. When you step outside the World Cup, when you step outside of football, and I'm not here to make things political, I'm here to just talk facts. The world has been just in such a separate odds, isolation, just so many negative things happening in the background of the World Cup. There's a war going on, and that's a fact. It's not an opinion. There's a war going on between the country that I live in, the country that Master and I live in, and Iran, who is a participant at this World Cup. But even through all of that, it just seems for the first time in maybe 18 months, that the world has come together. This is a celebration, not of differences, but of things that keep us as common bonds. This is a celebration of humanity. And I think that the fact that diaspora and the diaspora of so many countries is being acknowledged, is being actually celebrated, there's a sense of unity that I haven't seen in the last 18 months, or maybe even since COVID, that really, really makes me come alive. To be here in the New York City area and to see Brazilians celebrating with Senegalese. I mean, I didn't know Norwegians did the row thing until this World Cup. And I'm rolling with them.
From my perspective, I've had such kind of FOMO being over this side of the pond, but it's not been because, I've missed great football games. I talked to the guys about this. I genuinely looked into flights to go to Monterrey for this game tonight and then fly on to Atlanta for the England game, because I don't care about going to the games. I don't care if I've got a ticket. I want to go and join the Dutch Walk. I want to go and celebrate in the fan parks with the Colombian fans. Like, that's the thing I think I'm missing out on, not the actually seeing the great action on the pitch, which, let's be honest, I couldn't afford to get into anyway.
Yeah, no, that's what, for me, that's what makes a World Cup truly special. Yes, you celebrate what's happening on the pitch, but you celebrate the love of the game that we all have that's happening all around the world. The fans. Master, you got to go to a game, and when you were sending me photos and videos, I was feeling that same FOMO you were feeling, Will, and maybe a little burn in my tummy for some tequila. I know it's really damn good in Mexico, but I was feeling that because you really, really saw the love of the game happening south of the border here. You're seeing the love of the game happening in my backyard in New York City. You're seeing it in Los Angeles, where I didn't know the Hollywood stars cared about football, and here they are. You're seeing it in Canada, Vancouver, Toronto. You had 50,000 people, 50,000 Canadians go from Canada all the way down to Los Angeles to support their national team yesterday, to see them win and make history in the knockout round. Canada's a hockey country for now.
Not thanks to our new favourite, Master Jesse Marsh, of course. Mike, brilliant stuff. We have run out of time.
Appreciate you, Mike.
Can have this conversation with you for the next 2 hours quite happily, and maybe that's what we need to do after the World Cup. But thank you so much, sir. Really appreciate it. Master, a wonderful job from you, as always, out in Los Angeles. Any final words? Because I'm just going to annoy the production team and draw this out another 10 seconds or so.
I am not. Mas Fiesta, 3 games today. Let's go, baby. Let's wrap it up.
Thank you for joining us on The S Word, sponsored by Galchi.
The S Word with Will Gavin and Master Tesfacion
from talkSPORT.